Beauty and Brains presents A Work in Progress, your favorite weekly podcast all about navigating adulthood and adversity with transparency and vulnerability. Here, we highlight progress over perfection. You're listening to my personal and professional development diary, where I share the highs and lows and the real and raw parts of the story that no one talks about. I'm your host, Brelynn Hunt, A Work in Progress. Dear friend, I hope all is well with you and that you are as healthy in body as you are sound in mind and strong in spirit. As you can tell by today's episode, today we're going to be talking about some sad, dark, and troubling things. So I first just want to give a trigger warning that suicide will be discussed in detail in this video. Before we get into the video, I'm just not really ready to fully share everything yet, but I just want to ask for your prayers. I thought about not even recording an episode this week just because I'm personally going through some things, unfortunately, with my own grief in my family. And so this week has just been very difficult for me. Dang, in the first 5 seconds, I thought I was going to make it longer than this. It's been a very hard week for me, and but I wanted to talk about this, and it may make it even harder to talk about this, but I'm at least going to give it a try. So I ask for your prayers and just your grace. Again, if this podcast is all over the place, if it's not perfect, if I'm super sensitive, but let's start off with this week's brain freeze. It's much more than a brain freeze this week. The shocking and devastating news shook me to my core. It was more like a full body freeze. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, right after I uploaded my last podcast episode, I heard the news of the passing of a legendary, kind, loving, beautiful, and successful young woman in the pageant industry who took a piece of our hearts with her when she jumped to her death, ending her life and leaving so many people who loved and admired her confused, angry, upset, outraged, and awakened by the seriousness of depression and the dark reality of suicide. So today's podcast episode comes as a request to my viewer, Peyton Smith. She wrote me telling me about Chelsie, and she asked if I could do a podcast episode touching on mental illness and the pressure this world puts on women sometimes in the future, because it's clear that because someone may seem to have their whole world together, that there could still be a lot of things going on behind the closed doors. So again, first off, I'm grieving in multiple aspects, and even just processing this tragic news along with the world. So I just, again, ask for grace if I don't say the right thing. I personally have been so blessed to not have to really deal with death as much as other people may have until this week. But I definitely first want to share my condolences to the family and friends and all of her loved ones. And my thoughts and my prayers are with you all. And if you ever have an episode request that you want to share with me, you can visit my A Work in Progress page on my website, brelandhunt.com, under the Beauty and Brains tab, and you can message me there, or you can always DM me on Instagram. So, for those of you who don't know, last Sunday, a week from today, Chelsie Kryst died by suicide. If you don't know who she is a former Miss USA. She was a Division I athlete and a fitness enthusiast. She was, of course, a daughter and a sister. She was an educated woman with her bachelor's degree, which she graduated with honors. She had her MBA and her JD. She was a lawyer who so eloquently spoke about and advocated for and worked towards social justice. And then going into the pageantry side of things, after placing first runner-up in the Miss America organization for Miss North Carolina, which a lot of people don't know, but if you're like in the pageant world, you understand like how big of a deal that is for her then to go on and win Miss North Carolina USA on her third try, which was also her last year of eligibility, ultimately winning Miss USA in 2019 and then placing top 10 at Miss Universe. And then she has the longest reign for Miss USA because she was during the pandemic. And obviously a lot of people know of her, are familiar with her because she held that title of Miss USA the same time that Nia Franklin of Miss America was a Black title holder. Miss Teen USA and Miss Universe, they were all Black title holders at the same time in 2019, and it really just like, you know, shook the world, and the pageant community and the Black community just went crazy. But and then afterwards, after Miss USA, again, she held that title for like over 500 days, and she had an amazing reign that I was obsessed with. She recently became a correspondent on Extra, and so she hosted backstage coverage to several pageants, and she was even a preliminary judge for Miss Universe this past year, like a couple of months ago. And overall, she was just, again, always kind and spreading love and mentorship in the pageant community. So it is both a huge shock and an extreme loss for everyone. And, you know, just kind of once I knew that I was going to talk about this, but I'm still at a loss of words. I was journaling a lot this past week because there's just been so much going on, so much on my mind, so much on my heart. I really could not sleep. So I have a lot of the things that I want to say written down. And I'm glad that I do, because if not, I literally would be speechless, because she touched so many people beyond the fact of her, you know, being Miss USA. It's like you think, because there are some pageant title holders who it's like they're famous in the pageant world, you know, like they've touched lives in the pageant world, they've inspired people in the pageant world, but very few have been able to reach so many spheres that she did. And even just seeing the way that not only the media, but like everyday people, I've probably brought her up so many times during this week to people in conversation, and everybody has heard about it. Nobody's like, oh, I don't know who you're talking about. Everybody has heard about it. Everybody is saddened by it. It has this huge impact on people, even if they didn't know her, even if they didn't follow her. And, you know, I literally followed Chelsie, not to sound like, oh, I knew her from the beginning, but I literally followed her on White Collar Glam before she even won Miss North Carolina USA. Of course, I didn't really like know her, and I never got to meet her personally, but we'll get into that later. The point is that she is super special. Like, she's super special because just her energy and her impact is so strong that it's not just like, oh, it's a pageant girl who died. It's like, this is somebody who's, again, really amazing, really impactful, really successful, really beautiful, really just all around amazing person. And not only did she die, but then she died by suicide. And I think that's the first thing that I want to talk about here, just like dealing with suicide. I mean, as an observer and an admirer of her, and like as a friend, I've never had to experience this. Like, personally, I described this to my friends and my family who, you know, brought it up to me. It was kind of like, I imagine when Kobe died. Of course, everybody felt some type of way. Like, I even remember feeling sad when Kobe died. But I mean, like, y'all, I couldn't sleep about Chelsie, because just thinking about the fact that she decided to die by taking her own life, that is something that's so serious and heavy. And especially for her not to be a person who consistently talked about mental health, or who was super open about struggling in general. And, you know, we all have our own troubles and dramas and problems and things, but she just wasn't one of those people that you heard things about, so you just expected that everything was okay. And now we know from her that we can no longer expect those things. And like 3 a.m., I wrote in my journal entry, "She impacted me since the moment she won. I looked up to her. I loved all that she accomplished. I love her social media. I loved her impact on others. I loved how much she was loved by her friends, by her mentors. I loved how she loved to be a mentor, and I loved how she was a true pageant friend. To end her story so abruptly and tragically like this has my mind spinning. Jumping from a building? The strength to do so means your will to not want to live was so strong. You experience sadness and maybe even depression sometimes, but this really puts into perspective how serious mental illness and how taunting depression can be, and how literally life-shattering it is to not receive the help you need. And I just think that I don't feel like I'm doing a very good job, because I don't really have many words, except for I'm just very shocked that of all ways, if she would have died in a car accident or a plane crash, or if it was some type of accident where her life was taken from her, it would be a different sort of celebration of her life. But it's the fact that she was so beautiful and so accomplished and seemed to be all these things, happy and loved, but the fact that it wasn't enough for her, that she was being tormented in her mind, that she was dealing with some evil demon that was in her head, it really kind of like scares me to think, like I said, to do something, even the form that she took in order to end her life, like jumping off of a building, to me is just so heavy. And I'm like, to take that strength, that takes a lot of strength, and to think that you seem so strong in other areas of your life, being able to, go to a predominantly white institution, to make it through law school, to make it through pageantry. Like, this is a dog-eat-dog world, and you're not only surviving it, but you thrived in it. And yet there was something that was tormenting you so much. And so you wonder, like, what was it that had her so depressed? Was it, all the accomplishments? Was it, was it family issues? Was it a significant other issue? What was it? And of course, I did a lot of research. I watched a lot of videos. I consumed a lot of content just to get more answers. And some of it was helpful, and it did close in, and I'll talk about those things later. But I think that was one of the things that I really struggled with, was not knowing why. Like, I'll never really know why. I think a good part of it was probably the toxicity of pageantry and the hate that she received, and the amount of pressure that it kind of came with, not just pageantry, but just the pedestal that she put herself on, and that pressure. And then again, probably also unknown issues that we know nothing about. And then just to top it all off, the demon that's in her head, because I think we all have a demon that's on our other shoulder. Like those cartoons that you see an angel on one side and a demon on the other. I believe that's so true, except for they're both in your head. And you just have to be so strong to listen to the angel, your guardian angel in your head, the Holy Spirit, instead of listening to the devil on that shoulder. Because he's loud, he's angry, and he's mad. And once he figures out what that thing is that triggers you, he will literally push you to the edge. And to know that she was struggling with this demon in her head, I'm just wondering, like, did she ever tell anybody? How long was she struggling before just deciding to end it all? And the fact that we will probably not get any answers, because there's not going to be a huge, expose. There's not going to be a big movie, the life of Chelsie Kryst. Like, she was important. She was significant. She is, like I said, making headlines and news. But, as with everything, time will go on, and people are not going to look into it. Even, I heard some people in the comments on YouTube videos saying that it seemed like maybe foul play, because even the letter that she wrote was typed, and it just said, "Leave everything to my mother." No explanation, no why she did it. And it's kind of just like, but you just have to deal with it. Like, you just have to deal with the fact that that she's no longer here, and that it's a very good chance, especially now that the coroner has officially ruled it a suicide, it's a likely chance that she did take her own life, despite what we think, what we thought, what we felt, what we saw. And that just brings us to the next thing, which is like facing this dark disease that has taken so many lives, especially recently. And it's just like this slow and sometimes silent killer, and that's depression. And like I said, it was really weird, because she seemed to be so happy, and she was an obvious and intentional light. Like, you could see that she always wanted to be dancing and smiling and laughing, and she always wanted to be there for other people. And so to know that that was a front for her high functioning depression, it just makes it so confusing. Like, how long was she suffering for? And, was she so happy and nice to cover up her deep depression? Or, I don't know. I did see a really helpful post on Instagram that talked about how depression is a spectrum, which I don't think I've really ever heard before. I think that this is a helpful conversation, something to bring forward, because like I said, even for myself, sometimes I feel like, okay, I'm going too far by saying like I was depressed. I think that I have depressive states, and I'm like, or am I just really sad? Is life just not going good? And I think that like there is a chemical imbalances that have to deal with depression. So sometimes I'm just like, I feel like I'm taking a word that I don't deserve. But knowing that it's a spectrum, I think may make it not only just easier for me, but other people as well, for them to really realize and see, like, you may not feel like you're ready to jump, but you may be a little bit more than sad, or you may think that you're just sad, but you could be further along the spectrum than you think. Anyway, so the Instagram post says that one side of the spectrum, you believe that your life truly has no value and the world would be better off without you. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you may simply be contemplating ending your life because it feels easier than what you are experiencing. Like I mentioned before, I don't really have a lot of experience or expertise in suicide ideation, and so I really just want to read her post here because I feel like it's really great information. And she says, part of SI is taking back control of your life in a time when you feel you have lost it. If that's you, pausing for stillness is better than emotional action. If you feel ashamed and like you can't share your deep dark secrets out loud, please consider therapy. There are professionals who have heard it all and who want to hear what you have to say without judgment. It is important to learn your triggers and label the emotion they evoke because your feelings matter. Language has power, and once you can call it by name, you can conquer it with strength. I just think that I couldn't have said that better. I agree completely. And I think, like I said, even on my smaller scale, I know my triggers. I know there are certain things where I have to work very hard on, like telling Instagram, I'm not interested. Do not show me this. Telling my friends, do not mention this to me. I don't want to talk about this, because I know that the emotions that they evoke, and I will literally spiral because of them. And it's like, if you know your triggers, you can kind of stop it. And even, like I said, when I was first able to call out things like my anxiety, again, different things, but just relating it to my own experience, I think that using the language in order to say, like, the Lord does not give us a spirit of timidity or fear, but he gives us power, strong mind, and things like that. I think that language helps you overcome it and conquer it. So, of course, like I said, I definitely recommend therapy to everybody, because like life is crazy, y'all, and we're really going through things, and we just can't lose anybody else, especially not to depression this way. So the first step is acknowledging that you need help, and then preparing to combat when you have these mental health crises. And again, if anybody here is watching or listening, please know that you matter and you are valuable, and the world is better because you exist in it. Even if you forget for just a second, please don't let it be more than a second, because this is hard. This is hard on the people who love you. This is hard on the people who admire you, who see you from afar, who are rooting for you. You may feel like you have no one. You may feel like you're alone, but you're not. And the most important thing is to remind yourself that the devil will only remind you of your past when he's threatened by your future. So get that devil off your shoulder, shut him up, put a muzzle on him, and listen to that guardian angel who's trying to remind you of the good of your future. When the enemy brings up your past, cast down those negative thoughts and start declaring the word of the Lord. Because at the end of the day, God is bigger than your past, your pain, your anxiety, your depression, your anger, your fears. He's literally bigger than this world. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide you with a way out so that you can endure it. It's 1 Corinthians 10:13. Next up, I wanted to talk about toxic pageantry, because I think that a lot of people are focusing on the fact that, quote unquote, her life was so perfect and how could she end her life. And I think that that's a whole nother conversation. But I think that a big part of what probably made her unhappy was the fact that she was severely bullied online. I think a lot of people are like, oh, she had like haters, or, you know, she had to deal with stuff because every pageant winner does not have to deal with disgruntled fans, and the people who are into pageantry are into pageantry. Like I said, it's a whole industry, it's a whole community, and there are people who they have their favorites, and when their favorites don't win, they're mean and they're mad. And Chelsie was a dark horse throughout her Miss USA time. So I wouldn't say nobody, but you know, she wasn't on the top of people's list. She wasn't the one to beat. She wasn't the front runner. So when she won, there were a lot of people who were upset. There were so many people who were upset with her. We had just had 2 Black girls back to back 1 year earlier. Of course, we had that little break with Sarah Rose, but people were so upset that it was another Black girl, even though she literally, to me, I was so confused. I remember actually writing a blog post about it. And you guys know, like, I did a little bit of blogging. I didn't really blog. I went in and out of it. If I sat down and really wrote, that means that I was really like impacted by it, because I literally wrote a blog post about how, like, why does the pageant community, I think, hate Black people? I think that's what it was called. I literally need to go to my own website. Oh, so I will leave this in the show notes for you guys. But I wrote this on May 3rd, 2019. This had to have been either the day or the next day that she won the pageant. And my title was, Why is a Black beauty queen never good enough? I said, can I be honest with you all? Today, I have felt pure disgust for the online pageant community. For those of you all who don't know, yesterday was the 2019 Miss USA pageant. Although this is not the system that I'm competing in, it is still a fun event to watch and support as a lover of pageants. Leading up to this night, I've been keeping up with the various contestants, watching Instagram stories, and making my top picks for the crown based off of the preliminary competition and what I saw on social media. Last night, Chelsie Kryst, a part Black woman from North Carolina, won the crown. Currently residing in North Carolina, I was already familiar with Chelsie, her work in the community, and honestly, she was a great inspiration and a role model. Although she wasn't in my top list of girls before starting the pageant, I agreed with the judges that she indisputably gave the best well-rounded performance during the pageant, especially through her finals round of questions and answers. As a lawyer, she spoke eloquently and ultimately won herself the crown. This made her the third of the current Black pageant queen trilogy between Miss America, Miss USA, and Miss Teen USA. What a time to be alive. However, the internet's backlash to her win has deeply upset me, because she was not a standout contestant on social media to some, and frankly, because she was Black, there have been so many negative comments about how she does not deserve the crown. Heavily followed pageant Instagram pages have hashtagged the Miss USA's becoming an interview competition, insinuating that is the only reason she won the crown. This is upsetting to me because I see pageants as the ultimate representation of beauty and brains, which I mentioned before. So I think we just go on and wow, it's really crazy to see that I wrote this at this time. First of all, it was before Zoe was a part of I would say it was the, infamous trio. It ended up being the quad of them. But, I send my love and admiration to Chelsie because she embraces this amazing accomplishment without internalizing the biased hatred she received online. And that's what I thought. I thought that she handled it well. I realized that she was facing it. Like I said, I saw it from the moment that she was crowned. I was like, yo, why are they hating on her? She's literally beauty and brain. She's beautiful. She's gorgeous. Like she had a great body. She had a great energy. She was nice. Like what more do y'all want? Just because she wasn't blonde with blue hair? I mean, what? Blonde with blue eyes doesn't mean that she wasn't, beautiful. Like, don't y'all want a queen who speaks well? She's a whole lawyer. I was like, I don't get how you guys are not literally obsessed with her. And I forgot. But yeah, I was living in North Carolina at that time. So I had been already familiar with obviously who our state pageant queens were. So I saw from day one that she was crowned how much hate she was getting. And I even remember, like, I would watch a lot of stuff with Chelsie. She was my favorite current Miss USA. Of course, I loved like Deshauna Barber and Olivia as well. But Chelsie, like, she was my most recent queen where I was just like, yo, like I said, I really admired her. I loved her. I thought that she was great from the beginning. And then her reign was amazing. And then after after her reign, it was like it just kept getting better. And I saw from the beginning how much hate she was getting, and I realized that she was facing it. And like I said, sometimes I would be like on her Instagram lives, and or even just looking at the comments underneath her picture, and I would see things would be nasty, and she would talk about blocking people. So I don't think that I fully understood how much it actually impacted her. I even remember watching a TikTok of her talking about the microaggressions that she faced in the workplace of being a lawyer. So it wasn't even just in the field of like pageantry as well, but it seems like she just always dealt with a lot of animosity, even though she was super smart, super beautiful, super talented, super successful. I even remember like seeing this one TikTok of her. You can make a TikTok video responding to somebody's comment, and the comment said, "There's literally nothing humble about you. You are a self-absorbed egomaniacal, how do you pronounce that word? Egomaniac narcissist." I mean, that is if I got that comment, that's so intense. And not only did she see it, but she like responded back to it. And I don't know if the other girls just don't respond to it as much, or if her hate was just on a different level. And I don't really know why that is. I don't know if it was because she was so outspoken and she talked about Black Lives Matter, or, I don't really know what it is. It seems like people just like really hated her and they wanted to hate her. But at the same time, like I said, she was so nice that she also had like this huge amount of people who admired her and loved her and who were happy to support her and or receive her support. The last thing I'll talk about just on social media, because again, I'll never truly know. It's really sad. I've never gotten to meet her in person. And I was telling one of my coworkers about how I've had multiple opportunities to meet her, and I always kind of waited because I just knew, like, because I really admired her, I wanted, when I met her, for me to be, this sounds bad, but like at a certain status. Like I wanted to be introduced to her. I didn't want to like introduce myself, because I knew that she meets so many people. Obviously, like you're Miss USA, if somebody comes up to you like, "Oh, I'm a Black pageant queen too," it's like, "Oh, okay, cool, congratulations, good for you." And granted, she's really nice, so she may have like, taken to me, but the chances are that it just would have been like a hi and bye thing. And so I was like, I would have rather have already like been Miss Maryland and then like reach out to her and talk, because then I think she would have just like remembered me more. And I liked her so much, like I wanted to be her friend. And that's your whole goal when you're on social media, and or even just like you're being a title holder. Like you want people to like want to be your friend, like actually want to like you, want to hang out with you, want to learn from you, etc. And so I admired her so much that I didn't want to just meet her on a whim. Like I wanted to meet her when I knew that I had the opportunity to get to know her. And so like even just last month or 2 months ago now, when we were at Miss America, I saw her passing by. I went to the pageant at Miss USA when she gave up her title. I've seen her so many times, and I'm always just like, I have a little fangirl moment, and I don't go up to speak to her because I was just like, oh, like I'll have my time. But anyway, I also remember this other TikTok of her talking about the times that she's been humble. And it was, some things on there where it was like, not like placing top 10 in Miss Universe. And it's like, I can see how one's part of you was kind of like, you really wanted to be Miss Universe in order to prove everybody else wrong. But then you also were Miss USA at Miss Universe and you made the top 10. Like it's so hard, like not to let that be an accomplishment for you. But instead you felt like that was something that was kind of like, she said it, again, the things that humbled me, but I kind of saw it as like, these are the things that like play in my mind consistently about the times that I've taken a really big L. Because how else would you describe like things humbling you, right? Like, so if I were to describe like things humbling me, these are things that, like I said, I really wanted, and I never got them, and they make me sad. They make me feel regretful. They kind of make me wince. They cringe a little bit. Toxic Pageantry was very clear in her social media. That's the gist of what I was trying to say. That was it was very clear with the amount of hate that she received online, even from day one. And then I ended up watching this podcast interview that Chelsie had with Sierra, who's another pageant girl. She talked about how Chelsie dealt with a lot of racism and how she spoke about it in this video, which I'll post a clip next for you guys.
How did you deal with that on the mental health side of things?
I tried to just ignore it, which wasn't easy, but I think I'd started experiencing it when I first started competing in state pageants. I remember when I won my first preliminary competition, because in North Carolina, in the Miss America system, in order to advance to state, you have to win a local pageant, like your city pageant or county pageant or sometimes a festival one. And so I just won my first preliminary pageant the first year that I started competing. And there was this anonymous board where people could anonymously post, and it was a public board. And I remember going on to it when I first won, because, you know, people tell you not to go on those things now, but when you're a newbie, you don't know. Mm-hmm. And I remember going on there and somebody had posted like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she won. She's so ghetto. Have you looked on her social media page? Her Facebook's terrible. And it just like ruined my night, literally ruined my night. I remember I was on cloud 9 because I finally won. My friends were there. And I just remember thinking like, this is awful. Mm-hmm. I'm clearly woefully underprepared to go to state.
It is very, honestly, sometimes I feel like it's surreal of how nasty people can be. And I sometimes want to message people and say like, are you okay? Are you okay? Because
like that's the thing. Like you can't be okay and be that hateful towards
That's what I mean.
Yeah, and so that's the approach I tried to take, was like, okay, them calling me, you know, these awful names has almost nothing to do with me. You know, I think many of these people have probably been called awful names themselves. Maybe you're calling other people ugly because you think that you're ugly. And, you know, you called those names before. And so you're just copying that same hatred.
She also had another video where she talked about microaggressions that she dealt with from all facets of life, from acquaintances to coworkers to fellow students. And as Sierra says, she was clearly tired of it. She even says in another video that she quit the legal profession because of it. And again, I haven't really been on social media for like a month now, so I wasn't familiar with her having quit her law profession. I wasn't familiar. I thought at first I was kind of like, oh, I don't think she's really practicing law anymore, because she's like clearly she's being an extra correspondent. I thought that was her main gig. I didn't know she was still kind of doing both. But apparently she had quit the legal profession, and she kind of like not announced it, but like talked about it on TikTok. But I just hadn't been on TikTok. And I will say that and again, I hate to be so much so like, I knew it, because I obviously did not know that anything like this was going to happen. But I do remember like, I really, really liked her social media. I just thought that, like I said, she just carried herself so well. I would just always get excited to see like what she would post. I thought that she was like just an innovative person to see how to not like be, I don't know. I really just like the things that she posted on social media, because it didn't even necessarily have like so much context to it. I was genuinely just following it because I liked her, and I like that like she could have so many different niches. She could talk about fashion, she could talk about hair, she could talk about pageantry, she could talk about school, law, fitness. Like she could talk about pop culture, politics. She could talk about so many things, and I literally just listened to her because I liked her, and I thought that was so like powerful, how much like reach and impact and influence she had in so many different spheres. And so I really admired that about her. So I really like kept up with her social media just to see like, how are you incorporating all these different facets, and like, is it super calculated, or is it just, you know, this is who you are? And I noticed that she kind of slowed down on posting. Now granted, I haven't been on social media much of 2021, but when I was on, I noticed that she kind of slowed down on posting significantly. And so I did notice that, but only because I was watching her heavily, because like I said, I really admired her things. And so when I was on, I noticed she wasn't there, and when I wasn't on, I missed that she had quit the legal profession because of like the microaggressions. I think that what Sierra wrote in the caption of this video was really important, where she says society has to stop normalizing abusive, toxic, racist, and misogynistic behavior, and we need to stop normalizing telling people to acclimate to this behavior by tolerating it or appearing unbothered, because this is a larger work that needs to be undone. We need to be there for our friends on an individual level, but so much needs to be done on a larger scale to eliminate the triggers that cause depression and other mental health issues, especially for people of color and marginalized groups. I completely agree with that. And I think that this is something that just hasn't been in the forefront. The fact that these people were allowed to be so negative to her for so long in literally broad daylight. She said at one time in a comment, I can't tell you how many times I deleted comments on my social media pages that had vomit emojis and insults telling me I wasn't pretty enough to be Miss USA or that my muscular build was actually a man body. This is the toxic part of pageantry that nobody talks about. And I won't just say that it's just for, Black women, but I will say that we seem to get it the most often and also the hardest. And it should really be a huge wake-up call for everybody in the pageant industry, but just on social media in general, if the fact that we had to lose somebody who was so great, who was a great role model, she was a great representative for pageantry, she brought it back to life, she brought validity and credibility and fun and spunk and glamour. She was a great representative for pageantry, and the fact that you haters, you toxic people pushed her to her death is something that is like, y'all need to be held accountable for this, and it needs to be something that is spoke about so loud so that way this toxicity in pageantry can literally be null and void. It needs to be deleted. It needs to be erased. I hope that this really wakes people up to where they will think harder about leaving these negative comments on people's, specifically these pageant queens pages, thinking that you're hiding behind a screen or I'm just rooting for the person who I want to win. Your words matter, and they can literally make an impact. Like, this stuff is serious. And hopefully Cheslie's life will be a representation of that, where it won't be as bad in the future. That quote was actually in her essay that she wrote for Allure magazine for her turning 30 years old, which we're going to get into because that is a very hard to read essay now that we know the way that her life has ended. But the second part of that quote was that not only did she basically catch the attention of trolls for her looks, but also for her opinions, that they were enough to make a traditional pageant fan clutch their pearls. And so it's kind of hard to look back and think like, I can't believe I thought that she handled it so well, but in reality, it was eating her up on the inside. And like I said, I think that it's not fair. We failed her in making it seem like it was up to the contestant and the winner to be strong enough for the hatred and the bullying. Like I said, people want to call it like, there's a difference between a troll and a bully. And I think that just like how, 13 reasons why she was bullied and there are multiple ways that people can be bullied. And I think that as a successful grown woman, it doesn't seem like you're bullying. How could I bully Miss USA? But 1, 2, 3 comments, all it takes is one. And now it's toxic. And so, like I said, I think that the toxicity needs to be addressed and ultimately stopped, because of a light so bright and impactful and successful was hurt so deeply by the culture of toxic pageantry. And if it has left so many hearts broken, then it is serious. And unfortunately, an action like this is necessary for things to change on her behalf and in consideration for those to come. When Deshauna Barber commented on Cheslie's death on her Instagram story, she said, I will be completely honest with you all. The pageant world is a very brutal place, and not everyone with a crown is actually a queen. Queen meaning a person that is kind, compassionate, genuine, giving, hardworking, intelligent, and sisterly. Chelsie was the embodiment of a true queen. She set a bar that is impossible to reach. She was incredible. I can't explain how devastated I am sending love to her family. So I just think that with that in mind, like I said, losing somebody who just meant so much, finally finished my book from January. And there was this part in it where the lady basically had the students in an auditorium scream out what they were no longer going to let control them, whether it be anxiety or they were screaming out all these different things. And it literally made me declare then, and I'm declaring it here and now, I declare that toxic pageantry will have no power or control over the women in this industry. I declare that this life lost will be the catalyst for radical love and acceptance of all title holders and pageant participants from this day forward. In the memory of Chelsie and in the name of Jesus, I declare that toxic pageantry will no longer have power or control over this industry. Lastly, I think we have to talk about the obvious, which is what's touching so many people outside of pageantry, and that's assuming that her overwhelming success made up for the hatred and the bullying that she received. I think that something that has hit me so hard this week is that success does not equal happiness. So as I mentioned earlier, Chelsie had accolades for days. She was one of the most successful of the recent former Miss USAs. And again, I questioned, like, did she feel more pressure to do more, to be more, to have more, to accomplish more? Because if she just would have literally just done what she was doing, I think we all would have been like, Cheslie's amazing, Cheslie's amazing. So was it us? Like, were we making her feel the pressure as though she always had to one-up herself? Or did Chelsie struggle with the toxic concept of an elusive perfectionism that can never be met? Did she understand the impact that was already done with her influence, her story, her success, and her actions? Like, we saw her, we loved her, we showed her love, and why was that not enough? What more did she need? If she even opened up just a little bit, I'm sure that she would have received more love from us. If you needed more, we could have given you more love. This is where I've been stuck at after the shock of her death and then the suicide and then just being like outright upset about the toxic pageantry. This is where I've just been stuck at for most of the week, because if I'm being honest, I see a lot of myself in Chelsie. I think that, and just in so many ways that I would even just say, like, again, that elusive perfectionism thing, that's Brelynn Barbie. Like, that is exactly who she was. Like, had everything together. She was, that girl. And me stepping away from Brelynn Barbie was intentionally me saying, like, you are not perfect. You cannot be perfect. You will not be perfect. You will make mistakes. You are more of a work in progress than you are a perfect Barbie doll. Perfectionism is, I'm literally going to make a whole podcast episode about it, because it's I don't even know what it is. Like, is it a mental thing? Is it a society thing? Is it a chemical thing? Is it like because I watch too much TV? Is it because I'm on social media too much? Is it like, I don't know what it is, but I've always just wanted more. I see more for myself. I feel called to more. And so sometimes it's never enough, and it makes you super successful because you go after things. And if you go after 100 things, you're likely going to at least get 50 or at least 5, and that's 5 more than somebody who doesn't want to do anything at all. And so now you seem like you're so successful, and you have all these things where it's like, when you get them, you realize that it's never enough. I saw this one person on Instagram comment about how they were immensely focused on achievements in their life. And in a way, it was unhealthy and unrealistic. She said, for years, I measured my self-worth and success only by the quantitative factors that I could control and track: my grades, rankings, and weight. And now many of us do the same with social media: followers, likes, views, etc. But I can tell you one thing from my personal experience: a crown, more followers, getting into a top school, having a 4.0, getting your dream job, being a certain weight, etc. will not make you happy if you are not at peace in your core. We have to seek out our own joy and happiness. We cannot base our entire existence and success as a human being around external factors that we could change at any moment. And if we struggle to find happiness, it's critical for us to reflect and consider if we are battling mental health issues like anxiety, depression, OCD, or others. And I would literally, I wanted to like kiss this post. I was like, somebody gets it. I think that I'm not the only one who is addicted to achievement. Like, all I want to do is just like be great. But sometimes it literally consumes my mind. And it makes me have like anxiety, feeling like I'm, late or not on time, or not where I'm supposed to be. And that's like I said, God did not give us a spirit of fear and timidity. He literally gave us sound mind, peace. And so it's like, I have just been working this past year on detaching myself from those thoughts, that mindset, that attitude. But it's very hard, especially when I'm literally applying to medical school as we speak. Like, it's hard. And again, I'll go into more about like me and my thought process and my struggles in a different podcast episode, because this one just really isn't about me. But I mean, just being an outwardly successful person, and specifically like a woman of color, it's very easy like for things to become a facade, for you like to always be on, and that's just a heavy weight. It's very heavy and it's painful, and then it becomes a part of your identity and a sense of your worth. And now your worth is tied to your achievements, tied to your career, tied to your title. And your sense of worth is supposed to come from God. It's supposed to come from within. And so it really just makes it sad that Chelsie wasn't able to fully grasp that. It bothered her so much to the point where, again, we don't know if that was it at all. I think that a lot of people are assuming, okay, perfectionism, success, high functioning depression, suicide. I think it was probably more on the toxic pageantry side. Again, we'll never know. It doesn't really help anybody to assume things. I think that it's important for both conversations, because it could have been a combination. It's important to have both of the conversations to bring light to these issues that could be impacting people's mental health, mine, yours, your loved ones, your friends, etc. Because it just may be things that are just different than what you would assume from the normal or the easily talked about or the depression that you normally see. So I think that both are important, and we can't necessarily say it was one or the other. It could be a combination. It could have been neither. It could have been something completely, whatever. But because we're all just so attached to the story and we want answers, we're digging and we're like, it must have been this. It must have been this. It must have been this. And one of the ways that a lot of people are doing that, and why they're kind of coming to this, it's the pageant queen who had it all, but it wasn't enough. And it's never enough if you're, addicted to achievement. Was this essay that Chelsie wrote right before her 30th birthday in Allure magazine. It was called A Pageant Queen Reflects on Turning 30. And I'll read an excerpt of what she wrote. She said, "I discovered that the world's most important question, especially when asked repeatedly and answered frankly, is why. Why earn more achievements just to collect another win? Why pursue another plaque or medal or line item on my resume if it's for vanity's sake rather than out of passion? Why work so hard to capture the dreams I've been taught by society to want when I continue to find only emptiness? Too often, I noticed that the only people impressed by an accomplishment were those who wanted it for themselves. Meanwhile, I was rewarded with a lonely craving for the next award. Some would see this hunger and label it as competitiveness. Others might call it the unquenchable thirst of insecurity." I'm shocked. I've never heard anybody talk about this, to be honest. I don't hear anybody ever talking about this. And I think that this is something that I struggle with a lot. Like when Britt moved back home And, we were just having kind of like our first big like catch up in person. And, I was just telling her all that was going on. Like I said, I've been through a lot of different waves, especially with my medical school application, where I was just like, y'all know, like last year wasn't a good year for me. A lot of it was sad, and it was very hard every time somebody would ask me like, how are you doing? How are you? And I want to be like, I'm good, but I'm like, I'm really not good. I'm really just taking things into perspective. Sometimes it was like, everything is okay. Like, you have a house, you have a car, you have, you know what I'm saying? You have clothes, you have a roof over your head, but you just have this unquenchable thirst that's literally making you miserable day in and day out. It's interesting that she called it an unquenchable thirst of insecurity, because I'm so curious about this wording. And like I said, I need to do more thinking about it, and I need to get in to talk to a therapist, because I dropped mine and this has been a hard week and I need one immediately. But yeah, I think that this is just such a profound statement. Even the part about her being taught by society to want things, but how ultimately she just only finds emptiness in it. So again, I'll talk more about that later when I flesh out my thoughts and I speak to my own licensed professional about it. But overall, I don't think it was solely a pageant girl thing. Mental pressure isn't exclusive to modeling or pageants. It's also in athletics, it's in academics, and it's in any arena of competitive excellence. And I think that, that's really the story of my life. Like I said, like if I just want to be great. I just want to be, impactful and remembered. And I wish she knew that if that's what she wanted to, if she only knew what her death, how it impacted people, how it still inspired people, how it still touched people. There are people who are not in pageantry, who didn't have the things that she had, that quote unquote people only wanted because, people only cared about it because they wanted it for themselves. There are people who didn't want to be a beauty queen a day in their lives and were still touched by her story because of the way that she lived her life, because of the way that she touched people, by the way that she was so impactful in all these different ways. And I wish that she knew that, because then maybe, she would still be here today. So just to close out, I think the last thing is definitely just to remember that social media is a farce. Don't compare yourself to anyone on there, but most importantly, don't take the lives portrayed online of your friends and your loved ones as the full story. Don't let it stop you from reaching out, making a call, and saying I love you. People are going through things every day, and who knows if just one call, again, would have stopped it, would have changed things. And also be intentional about how you use social media. I've mentioned it a few times about how this podcast is an act of obedience for me. That's why even on one of my most saddest and depressing days of my life, I'm still here recording, because the old Brelynn Barbie content was easy, but this is designed to be impactful, just like how my creator has created me. I believe that transparency helps us defeat false perfectionism, and beating ourselves up internally causes for us to push away people who love us the most, friends, your family and your friends. But forgiveness and honesty and transparency can bring stability and a thriving mental health. So I know that you guys love the vlogs. When I can, I will. But the makeup videos and all that stuff, it's literally, I'm being obedient. So don't disrespect what God told me to do, because I'm going to be obedient regardless. And with that, be kind. I think more than ever, we have been reminded that everyone you meet is facing a battle you know absolutely nothing about. And lastly, the pageant industry can have some very high standards of perfectionism, which can make it difficult for women to acknowledge when they're struggling, especially with mental health issues. And so we can only pray that Cheslie's heartbreaking story will lead young women to cultivate their inner worth beyond any external validation or a crown, and just help them learn to lean on loved ones and, of course, seek help before it's too late. I will leave some musical therapy in the show notes for you guys. That's really been helpful for me, just when my mind is spinning. sometimes, like I said, you just have to feed it. And of course, watch out for triggers. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline will be down below for you all. And I'll close out with some kingdom keys. Galatians 6:8 in the Amplified Version reads, "For the one who sows to his flesh, his sinful capacity, his worldliness, his disgraceful impulses, will reap from the flesh ruin and destruction. But the one who sows to the Spirit will, from the Spirit, reap eternal life." I want to share a prayer that I pray very often when it comes to discontentment. And again, I think this has to do with that unquenchable thirst. Father, I confess that I quickly grow discontented with my life. If I'm not drawing nearer to you, I get stuck in a pattern of always wanting more. Please forgive me for this. Help me to fix my eyes on you, because you alone will never fail nor forsake me. And in your name, Jesus, I pray that toxic pageantry no longer has control over this industry, that you will remove the toxic pageantry off the keyboards, off the comments, off the blogs, off the boy boards, that you, Lord, will be in control of this industry from now on, that it will only produce love and joy and peace. Because you, Lord, are bigger than our past, our pain, our anxiety, our depression, our anger, our fears in this world. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. You can do so on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you're not already watching the pod, don't forget we're over here on YouTube at Beauty and Brains. So join me over here and subscribe to the channel. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Brelynn Hunt, or visit my website, brelynnhunt.com, for weekly podcast updates or to contact me to share your story. Until next time, be sure to live each day to the fullest, because you only live once, and give yourself some grace. We are all just a work in progress. I'll see you guys next week.